Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Saturday's Special. Well, it has often been heard by men that women have a brain which is less active, less perceptive. Nothing can be farther from the truth. If you have a real understanding and comprehension of the working of brain, you would find that women's brain are definitely much more active in various regions than men's. And when I say various, they are not comparable. In 75% of the regions of brain, women's brain are much more active, much more perceptive, and much more agile than men's brain are. You would find that situation in many times when you come across the real life situations. Women lose their heart much less than the men do. They have stoicism, they have courage, they have resilience. And this has been established by studies, especially in Emin Clinic in California. And this is the biggest brain imaging survey till date. It has compared 46,000 brain scans from 9 clinics over the world and analyzed the difference between the male brain and the female brain. And according to the scientists and the research, it has been proved beyond any doubt that the brains of the women are much more active, and that is why they are more prone, more vulnerable to anxiety, to depression, to insomnia, and to eating disorder, because their reactions are much more. You see, what happens is, brain, if you have seen the image of the brain, you would find there's a red colored area and there is a blue colored area. And blue parts are approximately 25% of the total brain, while the red areas are approximately 75%. And it has been seen that the increased red flow in the red color areas is much more in women than in men. But in blue colored areas, the blood flow is much more in men than in women. So the percentage of the activity is 75% to 25%. And yet many of you say that women have less active brains. Now what happens is, the benefit of this has been that because of the help that this study has shed on the working of the brain, the doctors would be able to treat the disorders of the men and the women differently. Women, as I said earlier, are more depression to Alzheimer's, dementia, depression, and anxiety. But men are more likely to fall victim to hyperactivity disorder and conduct-related disorder. And that is why you would see that more men who are accused of sexual assaults than women are. Women control themselves and they can analyze their emotions. Men become beasts when their emotions and conduct is concerned. You see, what happens is that the frontal cortex part of the brain is involved in focus and impulse control. And this prefrontal cortex is much more active in women than that of brain. So they can control their impulses and keep their focus laser sharp. You see, what happens is their emotions are transient They feel emotion and give vent to their emotion. If they are angry, they'll weep. If they are sad, they'll weep. If they are happy, they'll weep. There's emotional areas, which are also called limbic areas, are responsible for the mood and the anxiety. And these are much more active and, as I said earlier, resilient. But men have equally enhanced capability in some areas, in some sectors. The visual and the coordination center of the brain are more active in men. So coordination-wise, men may be better. But emotion, reaction, human relations, women are definitely much ahead. You see, this is important because the gender-based brain differences have been the bone of contention between the two sexes for a long time. But then let's concentrate not on the legends and the myths, but let's be clear that the brain scans show that the blood flow in the brain, which has been seen through photon emission computer tomography, shows that the women's brain, even when they're asleep, are often more active than those of men. The women have greater blood flow in the prefrontal cortex compared to men, as I said earlier. And that is why they are very strong, much more than you can imagine, in the areas of empathy, intuition, collaboration, self-control, and also showing appropriate concern. You would find women, a tragedy takes place, they'll weep, and still they will have empathy. They'll be thinking about their husband, about their kids, about the other relations, and also the household chores. So, their brain is focused on the tragedy, but at the same time is not letting go of the other responsibilities. Males, on the other side, confronted with a tragedy, either become stoics or just become dumb. They lack the coherence and the resilience, as I said earlier. They lose self-control. I mean, they suppose they are having self-control, but that's stoicism. The real self-control is shown by the women who control themselves and also show their emotion and also show their empathy. As I said the other day, empathy is one of the most important ingredients of human life. Then another thing, the limbic areas of the brain are partial. The blood flow in that is partial, and that is the reason because the limbic part of the brain, the limbic areas of the brain, which receive less blood in women, they become anxious much more quickly than men do. They suffer from depression, insomnia, and eating disorder. But the very fact that in day-to-day life, their actions are much more stronger than that of men. And have you seen that it's mostly men who die before the women? And another thing these scientists have proved, which is known to everybody, a couple has lived happily for many years and the husband dies. The woman is likely to survive the husband for many, many years. She'll be desolate. She'll be lonely. She'll be depressed. She might suffer from any disorder, but she will still live. And we have seen statistically that when the female dies, the wife dies, husband's days are limited. Very rarely do husbands survive more than a couple of years after the wife's death. Exceptions can be there, but mostly they don't survive because their only limbic portion is functioning, their prefrontal cortex is not receiving sufficient blood during that time. But most important is this the final word? No. They say the word till date. Who knows what further research might show? And another thing, we have said that women have more concentration. And that is why you will find women being more creative. Unfortunately, what happens is their creativity does not find expression because they are inundated and flooded with onerous responsibilities. They have to look after their husbands. They have to look after their children. They have to look after the household work. They have to look after the job if they are working. And then ensure that in none of the sectors they fail. Men mostly do not look after the way women do. They might share some responsibilities now. At one time, it was infra-dict even to go to a kitchen and pick up a glass of water. The women would serve everybody in the family with aplomb, with peace, with calmness, not the man. Man would come home saying, oh, I'm tired, it was a hectic day, and then just sit down on a sofa, pick up a newspaper or watch TV. And then keep cribbing all the time, he had a tiring day. The woman comes back from the office, maybe rest for a couple of minutes, maybe not, and rushes to do the household chores, becomes a tutor for the children, and late when the husband is snoring, she is possibly still working. That is usually what happens in the homes. And that is why, because the women's brain are much more active, and to call them dumb, to make jokes of their having less brain, shows the stupidity of the man. Simply because he is physically more powerful and historically he has been breadwinner, a bread earner, he assumes godlike characteristics which he doesn't have. Now, the very fact that the brains are plastic and malleable and remains so throughout our life shows the validity of the research. But there are times when the short-term and the long-term experiences will challenge the brain structure. And it has also been seen that the social attitudes, stereotypes can change how your brain processes information. Putting the men and women in identical socio-economics sector would show that the women will always outperform a man. But because of the stereotype ideas, because of the social attitude, more often than none, whether there is a spoken prejudice, women are, as far as possible, not given the position which they deserve. Man wants to keep the upper hand always, and that is reprehensible. You see, you would find that the women do not use their brains because they are not allowed to. Only when the males are understanding or the women are out and out rebellious, they come out. Otherwise, they have to conform to the social norms, and that inhibits their brain activity but does in no way detract from the capability of the brain to function in a much better, much active manner. Let's suppose that the women and men are going together. I'm giving a case. And they're faced with a challenge. Women, if she is not overawed by the man she is accompanying, would find a way out of the problem much more quicker than a man would. The cognitive skills change across time, place, and culture. And that's because of the external factors: education, financial independence, even diet. These change the working of the brain. And in all these factors, women is often at a discount. She received not the sufficient help or sufficient exposure that she is supposed to. And that makes the myths grow more. But the reality is, hey men, you recognize your partner is much more capable than you are. And women realize that men are not as capable as you are, but you let them believe that they are more capable. That is graciousness and kindness. Thank you, and have a nice weekend.